there's something about the imperfection of lines in art that is what makes art something you can get your teeth into. You know what I mean? It's like the imperfection also needs to be ordered. It's like some things work and other things don't work as well. And laziness or sloppiness is never an option. You know what I mean? It's like you're creating an effect, and you can tweak until you find that effect. And sometimes you have something in your mind, but you're struggling to produce it in front of you because you haven't figured out how to put what's in your head onto the paper yet. But like even an attempt to do something and a failed attempt to do something teaches you how to do that thing a bit better, you know. You know, sometimes it's trial and error, you know. It's even though the intention or the idea is not in error, it's your implementation of it isn't just, it's just not there yet, you know. So I'll show you something I'm working on at the moment. It's just a lady. She's quite beautiful. She has a big open smile, a head full of teeth. She's comfortably dressed and receiving a gift from this little bunny rabbit. And see the bird of paradise? This really simple sort of splash of colour. It's nearly indistinguishable from the flower bed sort of thing here. Really childish, isn't it? The flower bed's really childish. And but there's still structure there and colour contrast and formation, you know. So there's a uniformity to that, even though it's quite childish and childishly rendered and simply produced. And it's like the mixing, it's like an adult realising, rediscovering a childishness in their daily approach. And I think this is the best way to forget about depression, is to allow yourself as an adult to be as a child and not put the expectations that the world has placed upon you on yourself. And you didn't do it when you were a child, before you became aware of peer pressure and the scrutinies of others and the criticisms that they based themselves on things that other people told them they had to do. But it was sort of contagious and infectious what they were talking, because it implied that you weren't perfect and therefore you weren't loved. Well, that painting's certainly not perfect, but there's a perfection in that. Now, whilst you can do this in art, you can't do this in the real world in perpetuity. Yet, it serves as a reminder that if a child doesn't do things perfectly, and that's normal, then that is perfect. The imperfections of a child are perfect. So you don't have to be perfect. You see, the perfections of God are of moral are of morality. Yes, the perfections of God are also in his creation, in his creative hand. But we're not God. We're not required to be perfect creators. So we can let ourselves off the hook. We can stop criticizing ourselves till we've hammered ourselves into the ground and can't do anything on account of what demons have said, spoken over you, or somebody else who was under their influence. You know, us sensitive souls are affected by what others say. And we can spend our whole lives sabotaging ourselves on foot of what another has said. You will never amount to anything. You're a waster. You're useless. And these things can cut like blades when they come from people you don't expect them to come from. Well, I, as somebody who loves you, am saying, return to childhood. Because anything else is pretentious. Return to childhood. Allow that childish wonderment to enter back into you. Allow love to give you a gift and receive it welcomingly. Allow childish interpretation. There's nothing imperfect in that. Just love. With all your heart. And guard it at the same time. She's quite pretty, isn't she? See, there's a sort of a rate or a distance from the piece where it comes together and it doesn't look blurred or pigmented. See the way the canvas, as you bring the canvas-like effect, as you bring the page, the acrylic paper close to the camera, how you can start to see the crenellations, the bumps and hollows, you know. And you bring it away and it starts to look realistic. And then you have that sort of realistic face that she has there, so it's full of expression and light and joy. And then you bring it away and you can see all the childish interpretations around them. And it's something that's done regularly for children, isn't it? Like, you know, there'd be TV programs and they do this kind of stuff where they have these childish props and backgrounds and stuff, and they're really colourful and not necessarily perfectly constructed. It's just a nice reminder of childish interpretation, but also mature interpretation. So there's a childishness, but there's also a maturity. And Jesus said, "Do not hinder the children from coming to me, for it is such as these that will inherit the kingdom of heaven." Yeah, so hopefully that can brighten up your day a little bit. And even as I'm saying that, brighten up your day there's an entity trying to reduce the light. Let it be reduced in Jesus' name. See, there's a way of saying something. You say, yeah, I'm going to go out for a run now around the block. I'll probably come home and sit down. You say, I'm going to go for a run around the block. You coming? You remember when you were a child, you just recruit people, anybody around you. You coming? And that's the sort of freedom that exists in heaven. There's no expectation of evil. No expectation of anybody trying to do you any harm. Ever. That's beautiful. When my eyebrows are covered, I can look a bit harsh, can't I? Not harsh. Harsh. Not harsh. You see, what the devil does is the devil is an accuser. He's a false accuser of the brethren. But the false accusation is positioned so that it can serve as a warning. So long as you don't let it erode your coastlines. You see the point? Don't build your house on shifting sand. You see, Jesus is the rock of ages. He's the cornerstone. And cornerstone is like the first stone you lay to instruct the positioning of the foundation. It's the first of the building. And so, when you when you receive an accusation, if I was to just say, "You're a pink elephant," you might say, "Pink elephant? Well, clearly I'm not a pink elephant." But if somebody says, "You're angry because you are frowning," it's much more likely that one in the environment of you would be convinced that the accusation might be true. And as human beings, we're always considering the potential for others to consider that an accusation against us might be true. Because we're social creatures. That's just another dynamic to an accusation. An accusation isn't only to you for your own consideration of yourself, but it's to you for your consideration as to whether anybody else will believe it. Excuse me. Because a false accusation can create a stigma, which creates a reluctancy to associate with you in others around you. Because if people are in any way fickle, they will avoid you simply because there was an accusation made, whether it's false or true. Because their fear is that stigma, whether it's on the basis of a just statement or a false accusation, a slander, a devil, then they will not associate with you just to avoid even the potential for any stigma to attach to them by association. Are you going to hang around with him because people are saying he's... Well, I haven't seen any evidence of that, have you? That's what a strong person will say. And they do exist. There are people that will say, no, I'm only dealing with people at face value. And I haven't seen any evidence that that person has behaved in that manner. So I'm not going to assume that the false accusation or the accusation is true. Because on the basis of the information I currently have, that's not true. And this is why whenever I bring not a condemnation, but an exposing of corruption in government, because everybody in government is open to public scrutiny. It's the nature of a democracy. If you're not able to withstand public scrutiny, you shouldn't be in office as a public figure. People will say, well, the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. Whilst this is true, you'll know them by their fruits. So if you point to the fruit, if you point to the undeniable negative ramifications as a result of that person taking up office, you can't blame the cat for that. The responsibility and the incumbency is on the person in office, whether president or judge or guard or politician of any sort. They have to accept that if there's negative fruit as a result of their time in office, that it was their responsibility because they should have avoided it. You don't go to the commie chef to give out to him that you got food poisoning from the tureen. You go to the head chef. He goes to the commie chef. That's the way it should work. A commie chef is a chef that's learning the trade, and he has a chef de partie over him, as chef of the section. So the commie works in the section, but it's not his section. He might even be the only one working in that section, but he's still under a chef de partie who will check his section is in order. And every commie should have their section checked by somebody who knows what they're doing. Not every place works like that, because commies are entrusted, or they just won't pay another member of staff. But in the ideal, you're going to have rank. And why do we have rank? Accountability, responsibility on the basis of experience and knowledge. So if the president is saying, well, you can't, if I'm found in misconduct, you can't bring me before your courts, he is a disobedient child. Like the little boy with his hand in the cookie jar saying, you can't slap me. We told you not to put your hand in the cookie jar. You can't, you'll spoil your dinner. And your teeth. Well, you can't slap me. No. Are you sure? How are you going to stop me? You get a little slap on the bum to remind you not to put your hand in the cookie jar. No, you're not allowed. My teacher said that's child abuse. Well, your teacher doesn't buy the cookies. So the point is that the president saying, you can't, if the president of Ireland is found in misconduct, he cannot be brought before the the judge in the court. Why not? Whose judge is he? Whose president is he? If he can't be brought before the people and their arm of accountability or justice is the court, whose president is he? How can he wield a power he doesn't submit to himself? Like Mammy going around saying, "Now don't pick your nose, Johnny," and then getting a good greener for herself. Right in front of the little boy. Total hypocrisy. So we have to lead by example. Does the President think that he can enforce the law as the supreme head of the Defence Forces by not holding himself accountable to it? Is that the best way forward? Does he think that he can be protector of the Constitution by writing stuff in and calling it law that doesn't even conform to it? Unconstitutional waffle. Well, I didn't check, so you can't blame me. Wait a second now. You put the tyres on my car, but because you didn't check the air pressure, it's not your fault that I crashed. You put the wheels back on my car, but because you didn't tighten the nuts, it's not your fault that the wheels came off. I'm the President, custodian of the Constitution, but because I didn't check whether the bill was constitutional or not, you can't blame me. You can't slap me, said the little boy with his hand in the cookie jar, who was told not to put it in there, because dinner was nearly ready. Little pup. You can't slap me. No. Are you sure? Because I'm bigger than you. And I'm the boss. No. No? You can't slap me? You see the point? The point is, Michael D. Higgins claims to be Supreme Head of the Defence Forces of Ireland, the constitutional protector, the custodian of the Constitution, and he's not doing his job in Ireland. Well, why aren't you doing your job in Ireland, Michael? We pay you very, very well to protect our Constitution and make sure that no bill passes you unless it's constitutional. And you're telling us that you don't have to check the constitutionality of the bill. Well, why aren't you checking the constitutionality of the bill? Who's going to do it then? Well, nobody's obligated to. Nobody's obligated to check the constitutionality of legislation, said the custodian of the Constitution. And these men aren't in jail. And nobody's looking to arrest them. They're just scribbling this stuff down. Not even asking the people, is this okay? Will you write this? The little boy gets the rule book on Mammy. Says, put a line through that. Little Johnny, if he's found with his hand in the cookie jar, doesn't get a slap on the bobo. Who did that? Johnny? Johnny, your writing is very good. But Johnny! So, if Michael D. Higgins, little cute Irishman, absolute tyrant, is he even Irish? Writing whatever he fancies, not conforming to the law of Ireland. Irlanda, no pois. No pois for Michael D. Because he's not doing his job. So Michael D. might need a slap on the bobo. And certainly no legislation can coexist. One saying constitutionality of legislation is, principal to the implementation of the Constitution, and another one saying Michael D. doesn't have to check that. Article 25. Michael D. Higgins is, or any President of Ireland, this is not a personal vendetta. President of Ireland, custodian of the Constitution, supreme head of the Defence Forces, a military man, a scholar, must check the constitutionality of bills, for he is custodian of the Constitution. Why, this is a very important role. If Michael D. doesn't check the constitutionality of bills, my dear, who will? Who will check? Michael D. is getting paid while he's on holidays? We ought to give him paid leave, then leave him in, making a mess like that. Hadn't we? Why? Because Michael D. Higgins is the President. His incumbency is his oath of office. Uphold, implement, enforce both the Constitution and the law, which cannot offend one another. They cannot oppose one another. They cannot contradict one another if Michael D. Higgins is doing his job. Now we have the Courts of Appeal up in Dublin telling us, as the Irish people, in recent conclusions of court rulings, that legislation must be considered constitutional, even presumed constitutional, because Michael didn't check. And he doesn't have to. And you can't bring him before the courts for not doing it. Who says? We scribbled it down. It's the rules now. You can just scribble stuff down once you get into the president's seat? Would that not mean that you could completely destroy the country just with a pen? You wouldn't even need an AK-47. It's brilliant, Pinky. I know, Brain. I get ideas. Well, I don't think any of them should be allowed to put their ideas into practice. Clearly, they don't have good ideas. They have ideas that defy basic logic and reason and the oath of office that they take, the promise to the Irish people that is written into the Irish Constitution. What's that? Irish Constitution? What is this? That lady has a lovely constitution. No, that's not the Constitution we're talking about. That man has a lovely constitution. His complexion on his face is lovely. No, that's not the Constitution we're talking about. We're talking about the Irish Constitution. It is the infrastructural renderings which ensure that Ireland operates on a basis that is acceptable and fulfilling of the common good. And if you don't
make sure that that is achieved. In fact, what you end up doing is you end up creating a situation where the Irish Constitution cannot be implemented properly because of your little scribbles that you didn't ask the Irish people about in a democracy. Yes, you are the mechanic, but you're not allowed to open the engine, and you don't have to, actually. That's a sure way to make a mechanic useless. Tell him he can't open the bonnet.
You cannot be the mechanic and not open the bonnet. You cannot be custodian of the Constitution and not check for constitutionality of legislation. No, dear, that would go against what we learned in college. It would go against logic and reason. Indeed it would, yes. I do believe what the man is saying is correct. Because in fact, you can't check constitutionality and not check it at the same time. Therefore, if you're not checking it, you're not upholding it. Yes, indeed. If you are to implement the Constitution, you must be sure that anything you add doesn't offend the Constitution. Because you can't build a house and knock it down at the same time. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. Do they intend to collapse the kingdom whilst pretending to uphold it? What treachery! A scaffolding of deconstruction that they claim is a scaffolding of construction and maintenance. They put up the scaffolding, taking the building down brick by brick, whilst leading us to believe that the scaffolding is one of maintenance and repair. This is treachery. It's treason and sedition of a sort militarily implemented by infiltration. They can't write legislation all on their own. It's preposterous. This is a democracy. They can't be allowed into office getting paid very, very well whilst mocking the Irish people and not implementing the Constitution. Mocking the Irish people. Sure, they do that to themselves, dear. They call it satire. No, but this is serious. Why? Because it's to do with your rights and the common good and the welfare of your family and your children and everything. This is big stuff. It's not just like having a laugh at the Irish fella poking fun at the paddy, like, you know. This is serious stuff. This could see people dead on the side of the street. So we have to make sure that those who are in offices that we have placed as the Irish people, collectively and historically, and currently, extantly, those laws are current, that say Michael D. Higgins is custodian of the Constitution. Now, you cannot be custodian of the Constitution and not check bills for their constitutionality prior to signing them into the law. Any legislation that says such a thing is possible is unconstitutional itself, therefore cannot remain. And the fact that these men know these things remain and haven't made any moves to remove them means that they are conspiring to treason and sedition. If you can prove what I've said incorrect, I will never talk about it again. But I don't believe you can. Love you very much, my fellow Irish people. Please like and share these videos. Very important for our children and their children that we continue to expose corruption that festers at the root of our country. Blessings in Jesus' name.